Hello, everyone. Today I want to tell you a story about my wife cheating on me. If you like it, please subscribe to our channel. My name is William, and I'm 38 years old. I run construction projects in the heart of Columbus, Ohio. Life has been good. I thought it was, you see. I created my life the same way I build my projects, with care, accuracy, and a plan for everything. Ava, my wife, is 36 years old, teaches a class of energetic first graders, and has always been the type of person whose grin brightens a room. We have two lovely children, a dog that is too smart for its own good, and a house that looks like anything out of a family sitcom. Now, I'm the type of man that doesn't play around. They call me a straight shooter. Loyalty has served as the cornerstone for my entire life. I do not forgive easily, and don't forget, treachery isn't just a word in a dictionary for me. It is a collapsed building that cannot be rebuilt. But let me take you back a little. It's been exactly 11 years. That was the year I proposed to Ava under the Starlight Inn, Columbus Park of Roses. She had tears in her eyes, and I realized I held the entire world in my hands. Our love, it was the kind you didn't question, and it was intended to last until the planets stopped turning. Now, fast forward to today, or more specifically, a few days ago. Christmas is rapidly approaching, and I'm up in the attic looking for decorations. It is a mess up there. Dust covers boxes that we haven't touched in years. That's when I discovered an old flip phone buried away in a box labeled Memory 28. Funny, I don't remember us saving old phones as keepsakes. Curiosity has always been a friend of mine, so I believe, why not see if this ancient artifact is still functional? I find the old charger, plug it in, and the small screen comes to life. It's like reawakening a piece of the past, and the past certainly had a lot to say. I'm not prepared for the messages that turn my stable world into quicksand. Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, almost everyone who watches these videos is not subscribed. It would mean the world to me if you could get out of the full screen video for 3 seconds and click the subscribe button. It is free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Sorry for disturbing, and thank you very much if you subscribed. They are not for me or any of my family members. No, there was someone named David with small hearts next to his name. My brain begins performing the math before I can stop it. Ava made no mention of David 11 years ago. So there I am, sitting in the dust, in the cold, with every heartbeat feeling like a sledgehammer to my ribcage. I need to know more, but not like this. Not with half-truths from a phone that should have remained lost. I put the phone in my pocket, go downstairs, and put on a grin for the kids. From on the inside, I'm anything from a festive dad. They see that I'm a man on a mission, a search for the truth, and there is where I am. Read. It's standing on the edge of what feels like a cliff, looking down into what could be the end of all I've known. But I'm not the type of guy to just jump. I'm the one who plots the descent. So I'm going to find out everything before confronting her, because in my universe, you don't accuse without evidence. You don't demolish a building without knowing why it has to fall. I'll keep you posted. Hey, read it again. It's William. I wish this update was about how the phone was simply a misunderstanding. However, life has a way of tossing curveballs that would make any major league pitcher envy. I found the old charger. Wouldn't you know it? The David thing did work. The phone started up with that old familiar melody. It felt like any ordinary day. My heartbeat was racing, the type of adrenaline you receive while standing on a high beam 10 stories up, no harness. That's when I noticed it. A messaging app I didn't recognize was glowing with notifications from years ago. Reading those messages felt like witnessing a vehicle wreck in slow motion. They were from Ava to this guy, David, and were laden with words that felt like punches in the gut. I miss you, cannot wait to see you. Last night was a dream, every single one, a betrayal, every syllable another break in my seemingly perfect life, the dates they provided corresponded exactly to a period in my life that I recall. Vividly, I was laid up 11 years ago after a terrible fall from a site, the type of damage that leaves you looking at the ceiling for weeks. Ava played the devoted fiancé, bringing me meals and handling my medications or so. I thought now I am seeing Ava was also slipping. Off to play house with a guy. When I was on painkillers, I sat on our bed, the phone in my hand, feeling like alive. Explosive, my brain was spinning disbelief and rage, and yes, the ache of betrayal that burns your insides like a branding iron. Ava, the woman I shared, my bed, my life, and my children with Snee. Cack around like a character from one of those trashy soap operas she despised. I wanted to storm down the stairs, confront her with her little love notes to David and check her face for any signs of remorse, but that isn't me. I'm not the type of person that initiates a confrontation on a whim. I needed to know everything first to make sure I had everything in order, because I want to bring the hammer down with the full weight of the truth behind it. So I am. Playing the long game, I stored those messages in my head, returned the phone to my toolbox. Ava is acting like it's any other day. She has no idea that I know, and I'm going to leave it that way for now. However, every grin and kiss on the cheek now feels like a lie. I need to delve further and make sure I have the complete picture before I destroy our lives. If I'm tearing down the house, I'll make damn sure I know why. I will let you know what I find. Read it, because right now that's all I have. Okay, read it. This is William, and I'm back with an update. If you've ever imagined life being as complicated as the cords underneath your television, you're not alone. The last several days have felt like I was living in a detective show, except that I'm the one putting together his own case of domestic heartbreak. With the subtlety of a cat, I began searching over our past. I went down to the basement where we store all of our old planners. Ava is a teacher. She is diligent about keeping records, so I dug out the one from 11 years ago, brushed it off, and unaired a map of the past she claimed she was working. Late business trips and necessary team-building weekends, I cross-checked the dates with the communications and guess what it was like putting pieces together. A puzzle, a very sad, pitiful puzzle then. There was social media archaeology. I logged on to an old Facebook account I hadn't used in years, scrolling back to simpler times or so. I thought there were images of Ava and this David man often together at company gathering, always tagged together. Great job, team. I could not have done it without you, David. It was all right there in the open, but I was too blind to notice it. The more I discovered, the more meticulous I became in my documentation, screenshots and printed emails kept on an old hard drive. Receipts for dinners out that I assumed were for client meetings. It felt as if I were preparing a case for a jury, except that I was the lone juror and my decision was already pretty much made. All this while I'm putting on an Oscar-worthy act as the naive husband. I kept things normal, good-night kisses, and how was your day banter, however it was, eating me up inside. Every smile she gave was like a twist of the knife, but I couldn't confess. I have to keep up the act for the kids as well. They do not deserve to be pulled into this mess. David is this man. It turns out he left Ohio a few years ago and moved to California to work in technology, a completely new life. I even discovered his LinkedIn profile, great at developing professional and personal ties. Yes, a true charmer. So there you have it. Read it. William versus the ghost of adultery. Past the evidence pointed to a guilty verdict. What remains now is the confrontation, but it must be more than a showdown. It has to be the closing act of a play that has been running much too long. I need to prepare it properly, right down to the last word, because when I eventually confront Ava, I want to see the truth in her eyes without a question. I will keep you all updated. As soon as the curtain rises, thank you for following, guys. It means more than you realize. Hello, Read It William. Here again, this story is turning out to be lengthier than any of those never-ending drama shows, but every story requires a climax, and mine is right around the corner. I've decided it's going to happen on our anniversary. That's correct. Our union's day of celebration will be It's a harsh irony, yet it feels appropriate on them. Day I asked her to be mine forever is the day I'll place all my cards on the table. You don't walk into a hurricane unprepared, so I've been saving my heart for what's next. It's been like living in a house of mirrors with each reflection. Revealing a happy family, however, I am well aware that some of those visions are nothing more than illusions. The discomfort of continuing the deed is a continual burn. It is present when I wake up and kiss Ava good morning. And there when we sit down to supper and discuss what the kids did at school, and it's there when I turn out the lights and pretend to be asleep close to a woman I trust. My jaw has been clinched quite tight. I'm shocked I haven't cracked any teeth. But here is the deal. I am not going into this blindly. I have a plan. I prepared the questions and practiced them in my brain, and in front of the bathroom mirror the words are like lead on my tongue, but they're prepared to be fired when the time comes. I'm going to take her out for supper, the same area where we celebrated our engagement. It has always been our spot. I'll let the evening settle, allow her to drink her favorite wine, and then I'll ask about her background. I'm not really curious, but something seems odd, and once she realizes I'm not just talking, I'll show her the proof. I want to see her face. Examine her eyes to see how she is truly feeling. Is there guilt, remorse? I need to see it raw and unfiltered. The discussion in my thoughts travels in 100 different directions, but every time it finishes, I walk away from the table. So that is the plan. Read it, let's just say. That emotional preparation is an ongoing process. Every morning I have to swallow the bitterness, and every night I have to drink a couple of drinks to block out the rage. It's difficult not to let the fury or hurt leak through the cracks. However, this masquerade is only temporary. I will keep you all updated. You'll be the first to know when an era comes to an end or a new chapter begins. Hey, William, read it here. It's been a minute since my last update, and I've got a story for you. Our anniversary that night, I decided, would be the tragic play's big climax. We proceeded to our usual site, the little Italian restaurant downtown, where I had gotten down on one knee. Years before, the same table, the same dark lighting that casts golden halos throughout the room, and the same old waiter with his lopsided grin. It was supposed to be a romantic occasion. Commemorating a decade in a year of marriage, Ava smiled as she dressed herself in her favorite clothing, which made her eyes look like the ocean, and there I stood with a tempest boiling. Beneath my fake smiles, we ate, she talked, I nodded. The day which of normally was. Agonizing, each course brings us closer to D-Day. With each bite I felt like I was swallowing my rage. The wine tasted unpleasant on my tongue. Finally, we arrived home. The babysitter left. The children were already in bed, and that's when I transformed from a loving husband to a man on a mission. I didn't even let her settle. They did not provide coffee or a comfortable couch. I laid it out, the old phone messages and photos like cards on a table. She initially laughed it off, a nervous chuckle that didn't reach her eyes. She tried to explain that it was a joke, a ridiculous thing from the past. However, her voice was as wobbly as a leaf in a hurricane. Then came the hard evidence, the dates and the facts I had painstakingly compiled. The laughs stopped. Her face changed from pale to flushed. A wave of realization swept over her, and then the dam broke. Tears and weeping. The I'm so sorry, but here's the deal. Read it. I didn't feel anything. There is no pity for those crocodile tears, nor is there any warmth in the coldness that is spreading within me. When I informed her it was done, my voice sounded like steel. She pleaded, she insisted it was an error, a thing of the past. However, it was too little too late. I informed her that I would be staying in the guest room until we worked out what to do with the house. The kids are the shattered pieces of our existence. Together, she cried herself into sleep on the sofa, and I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of a room I could barely identify, so the dust has settled slightly since the night of revelation, and by settled I mean the calm that comes after a bomb goes off. There has been a lot of debris, emotions, and recollections, bits and pieces of a life. I thought I knew. I sat Ava down the next day. It was not a negotiation. It was a declaration. I told her that I wanted a divorce. No second chances, no coups treatment. The trust was shattered, and I am not the type of man who tries to fix. A broken mirror, she cried. Sure, she replied, sorry 1,000 times, possibly. More, but my course had been established. The kids' man telling the kids was the most difficult part. I sat them down, looked into their perplexed little faces, and explained that even mommies and dads need time apart from each other, that we both adored them more than anything, and that would remain same regardless of where we slept at night. There were tears and inquiries that I had difficult replies to, and I had to keep it together. For their sake, I scheduled a family gathering to tell my parents and sister, several close buddies. It was a mixed bag. Some people were shocked. I couldn't believe sweet Ava could do such a thing. Other people just hugged me. They said they had my back. My dad, he's a man of few words. He merely squeezed my shoulder and gave me the nod that says you're doing the right thing, not Ava, who is currently seeking for a new place. We agreed that she would move out. It's best for the kids to stay at home and maintain some sense of normally. We are working out the details of co-parenting. It's like walking a tight RPP, but we're doing it for the children. The attorneys are now in the picture, drafting out the paperwork and dividing up the life I've spent nearly 15 years putting together. It's cold, impersonal, and necessary, cutting away the damaged part of a building so that the rest can remain standing. I am not looking back. Read it. I've always been the guy that thinks ahead, makes decisions, and doesn't dwell on what ifs. I stand by my beliefs of loyalty and honesty, and if you can't give me that, you won't have another chance, so that's where I am. I'm a single father who is about to divorce and is looking out for my children. It won't be easy, however. I've never been one to avoid difficult situations. Thank you for staying with me. I'll provide another update whenever the next shoe drops. What up, Reddit? It's William back for what appears to be the final chapter in a drama I never wanted to be a part of. It's been several weeks since I last poured my guts on the internet. I've read every single comment and followed every bit of advice, and I have to say, it's made a difference. The kids and I were doing fine, better than okay. Sometimes there is genuine laughter in the house. We've had plenty of moments, but we're talking it out now. We deal with emotions as a team. My kids are tough little cookies. I've discovered a sense of calm amid the commotion. The divorce is almost complete, and the future is looking different than I expected. However, everything appears to be fine. I'm a full-time father, and I have never been more committed to a work in my life. I'm baking cookies and only burning about half of them at every soccer game. I'm the biggest cheerer, and we have a Friday night movie tradition that the kids choose, and I've watched enough animated films to last a lifetime now, and yes, I'm dipping my toes back into the dating pool, not jumping in headlong, but beginning to consider the idea of a new wife, a new partner in crime, someone who understands that my children will always come first and shares my core principles. I am wary. You'd better believe it, but I'm also hopeful, so here's the kicker. The moral of the story, or whatever you want to call it, is trust. It is everything. Without it, you're building on quicksand. And the truth, regardless of how harsh or violent it is, facing falsehoods, they chew through everything like rust. They may not cause the collapse right immediately, but give it time, and it will all tumble down. I've learned a lot about myself, what I can handle, and what it truly means to follow your ideals. I'm Not the same person I was when I first posted here. I am a little wiser, a little tougher, and a lot more grateful for the and honest people out there. Thank you for being part of my narrative. Read it for advice, the rough love, the virtual. Shoulder to lean on. Keep your eyes open, stand firm, and never accept less than you deserve. Mick was signing off now. Thank you for watching, and if you could subscribe to this channel, it would mean everything to me. Thank you to everyone. That deist, and have a good day or night. It is difficult to discover that you have been lied to. It's awful to discover that someone has been your companion for 10 years. I am 37 years old male and have been married to my wife, 36 female. We have been married 10 years. We are both employed professionals in the IT sector and do not have children. My wife and I have been happily married for 10 years, but in recent months, she has begun to act strangely. At first I believed I was overthinking things, but as time went, it became too evident to dismiss. We work for different firms, but our offices are in the same location. We had the same lunchtime and used to eat together very frequently. Our co-workers would sometimes accompany us. My wife stopped going to lunch with me about 6 months ago. At first, she said she was preoccupied with work. Then her supervisor convened an emergency meeting. I let it go at first, thinking these were valid reasons. She began arriving home late as well. The reasons were the same. Because we were on the field, I realized that the workload could be significant. My suspicions were validated when she was typing something on her phone during supper. One day, I removed her phone from her fingers and laid it aside. We do not allow phones to be used during supper. She grew afraid and got up to retrieve her phone. Nothing like this has ever occurred before. Since the beginning of our relationship, we both believed that sharing our passcodes was unnecessary in order to establish confidence. If we truly trust each other, we don't need to keep track of what they're doing. Until that day, I never felt the need to check her phone. She explained that she was only texting her sister since she had a rough day at work. I assured her I got it, and we continued to eat without talking. She did something that made me feel horrible. Being terrified was unnecessary if it were only her sister there was an issue, but I couldn't simply tell her that this time. I knew she'd make up another reason. I didn't know what to do. As she fell asleep that night, I kept worrying about what she might be hiding from me. Throughout our marriage, we have always been there for each other. And now she's acting differently. Hello, everyone. It's been unfortunate recently. Basically, everyone who watches these videos isn't a subscriber. It would mean the world to me if you could get out of the full screen video for 3 seconds and click the subscribe button. It is free and you can unsubscribe at any time. Sorry for disturbing, and thank you very much. If you subscribed, I figured I'd chat to her. In the morning, it's better to communicate than to arrive to decisions on my own. When I awoke the next morning, my wife was not in the bed with me. The bathroom was likewise eyes empty. It wasn't like her to wake up before me. I looked for her in the kitchen, in the garden, but she was nowhere to be seen inside the house. I became worried. I called, but she didn't answer. Just as I was about to leave the house to look for her, she returned, her cheeks reined from the cold. I wondered where she had gone so early in the morning. She informed me she couldn't sleep and went for a walk in the park near our house. She kissed me and then went inside to prepare coffee for us. Just as we were entering, I heard a car start nearby. It was rather noisy. I don't normally hear that sound in my area. Right as the engine began, I noticed my wife become agitated, but she quickly covered it up. When I got into my car to drive to work, I couldn't quit thinking about my wife. I had no idea what was happening. John, my friend, was also leaving his house. His small child clutched his arms tightly. When I waved, he returned the gesture. I was about to leave, but I automatically paused to speak with him for a few minutes. It's been a while since we talked. When I asked him what was going on in his life, he revealed something that astonished me. John takes his son to the neighborhood park every night, but it is currently closed for maintenance. My wife informed me she went for a walk in this park in the morning, and it really stuck to the wall. My wife has lied to me. I returned home instead of going to work I needed. To find out what she was hidden from me, I glanced through her closet to find something to say, but there was nothing. To say I was frustrated, ated, is an understatement. My wife's laptop was still on the table I turned it onto. Check her email. It didn't include anything. I searched through a few more things, but found nothing. Another shock of the day occurred just as I was ready to turn it off. This one was 10 times larger. She received an email in her company's mailbox. I didn't check her work email since I assumed there would be nothing there, but there was. My wife had gotten a weird email inviting her to meet in a cafe distance from the office. The email address did not include a name. It was simply a random username. This person had only sent her the location and time. It had a really mysterious feel to it. This didn't make sense to me. Why did my wife meet this person? Why did she tell me a lie in the morning? There are a lot of questions and no one to answer them. We've been married for 10 years, and I believed we were happy together. I could have asked my wife, but why would she tell me the truth after she lied to me in the morning? Her actions had left a seed of doubt in my mind, which wouldn't go away until I sorted out what was going on. I figured it was best to keep quiet and wait until the evening. I wanted to know if she told me the truth about meeting someone or if she was feeding me more falsehoods. I didn't have to wait too long. She called me in the evening and told me she needed to work late for an office meeting. Her boss had a schedule. I couldn't shake my unpleasant sensation. This was the second lie my wife had told me today. When did my marriage reach this stage? We started lying to each other. I decided to follow her and see who she was meeting. I arrived at her office just in time to watch her leave in her car. My heart was hammering in my chest as I silently followed her car. Her automobile woo its way through the city, and I followed her surreptitiously. She arrived at the place given in the email. The cafe's lights create a warm mirror on the pavement. I parked my car safely away in the shadows. I saw her enter the cafe with a gentle grin on her lips. My gut turned as she hugged a man who stood up as she entered. I was frozen when another man embraced my wife. My thoughts raced. How long has she lied to me? I recalled the times when I held her in my arms and she told me how happy she was with me. Was it all a lie too? I could have gone inside and demanded an explanation, but I decided not to. I figured it was best to let her keep up this masquerade. I wanted to see how many more lies she could tell me while resting in the same bed as me. I was curious what else would happen to this mysterious man. I followed her back home. I waited near her house after she arrived to go inside. She greeted me with a warm smile, as if it were quite natural to return home after lying to your husband. I wanted to know why she had been lying to me. I wanted her to look me in the eyes and say it was nothing. I wanted her to calm the betrayal thoughts that were swarming in my head, but I couldn't because I was certain she wouldn't tell me the truth. I maintained my monitoring. I followed her as she went out to lunch with this man and fed me falsehoods about her demanding work schedule or anything else for the next week. I watched her meet this man and eat together. They hugged before going their separate ways. I have no idea what to think of this. Why would she lie to me if she hadn't done anything wrong? I didn't have to wonder long, because one afternoon when she told me she was stuck in a meeting, she was actually on her way to a very beautiful hotel on the other side of town. I followed her. I assumed she was merely eating lunch with him in the restaurant, but my heart broke into a million pieces when the mystery guy interlaced their hands and led them to a room together. I could no longer restrain myself. I knocked on the door. The mysterious man opened the door, shirtless. I saw my wife lying in bed waiting for him. Her smile faded when she saw me standing on the other side of the door. I felt like I lost everything in. That one moment I said nothing to either of them, consumed by sadness, I left the hotel and made my way home. I sat on the couch in the living room. My thoughts overtook me. I felt a mix of anger, heartbreak, and confusion all at once. I don't know how long I sat there when the front door opened and my wife came in. She panicked. That was visible. You don't have to lie to me anymore, I told her quietly as I wiped my tears. I didn't have the energy to listen to any more of her lies. She came and sat beside me when I thought she wouldn't say anything. I was about to get up. I'm sorry, she whispered. I asked her how long this has been going on. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to know the answer to that question, but I had to know. She told me it started 8 months ago when she went out of town for a work conference. She met this guy who used to work in that branch of their company. We were just friends in the beginning, she told me with a shaky voice. I asked her to continue, knowing my heart wouldn't be able to take what was coming next. She told me that they got drunk on the last day of the conference, and the desire for excitement led them to bed together. She told me that she felt very guilty the next morning and decided it would never happen again. As both of them were married, she came home and lost contact with him. But when he was transferred here 6 months ago and they started working together, one thing led to another, and they couldn't stop themselves from starting the affair again. She told me it all just began as a yearning for something different, as she told me how she went behind my back and lied to me. My trust shattered. She went to meet him that morning. When she told me she had gone to park and he dropped her off in his car, I was devastated. I thought I knew my wife well, but she had been leading a double life all along. The entire foundation of my marriage crumbled beneath me. I went through the day with a blur of emotions. I was not in any condition to make any decision. I asked my wife to give me some space. We lived in the same house without talking to each other. I did not know whether to salvage our marriage or walk away from this betrayal. My wife kept telling me that she's sorry and asked for forgiveness. She told me that she has ended her affair and we can seek counseling. But I felt like my wounds were too deep. Even though the betrayal broke my heart, we went to counseling together. I thought maybe we could still salvage our relationship. We went through various counseling sessions, but I couldn't escape the image ingrained in my head of that day, of that hotel room. Who knew how many times they went to some hotel while I waited for her in our home? Our therapist, IST, urged us to communicate with each other, but I just couldn't shake the hurt and betrayal she had caused me. The trust one placed in her was irreparably broken. Counseling didn't help in subsiding my pain. The pain was too raw to handle. I decided it would be best to walk away from this toxic situation. We sat down and I told her that I could not be with her anymore. Tears streamed down her face, but she had to face the consequences of her actions. I cannot shield her from the result of her own doings. She told me that she'd move out of the house. I didn't stop her, as it was best for her to stay away. I sat in the yard as she said goodbye. Movers came in to take her luggage. I saw all of it happening in front of my eyes. I saw as my marriage of 10 years ended. In front of my eyes, she left it to me to decide when I had to file for divorce. After she moved out, I went through my days numb to overwhelmed by the emotions. I kept thinking, if this was my fault, maybe I could have done something so she didn't feel the need to go somewhere. Else I continued my counseling sessions. Even though my marriage failed, I still wanted to soothe the pain in my chest. It took time, but the sessions helped me understand that it wasn't my fault for what happened in our marriage. My counselor suggested that I pursue new activities. Initially, I lacked the mental energy to try anything. With a little push, I became interested in new things. I began resuming interests that I had neglected while preoccupied with my marriage life. It was difficult, but it felt peaceful to begin reconstructing my life anew. The pain began to lessen. With time, we filed for divorce by mutual agreement. She told me she was truly sorry for the pain she had caused me and was prepared to wait for forgiveness. "I hope we can be friends again," she remarked. I told her that maybe we could become friends over time. We embarked on different journeys of self-discovery. We navigated divorce and separation while discovering our route to recovery. Being alone after 11 years of marriage felt strangely different. Though our house seemed too vacant to be alone in it, seemed unusual to not have plans with anyone. I began taking care of both my emotional and physical wellness. I started reconnecting with old friends I never had the heart to tell them about my wife's adultery. I didn't want to portray her in a negative light. I still felt a sense of loyalty to her. Our divorce went very well, and we parted way forever. It was obvious to me that we couldn't be together again. I didn't think I could be with anyone again. I didn't just dedicate 10 years to our marriage. I gave my all. While my wife went out in search of excitement, I was wondering about our future. My trust is beyond repair, and my heart is too wounded to fall in love again. I hope that everyone who reads my tale learns the value of trust in any relationship. A single falsehood can break even the strongest of connections. I ran into my wife 6 months later at the grocery store. We ran into each other while getting hot chocolate in the same aisle. Seeing her after all this time did not bother me as much as it had in the beginning. The counseling sessions were worthwhile. I was thinking in my head, we got divorced, and you finally began sipping hot chocolate. I teased her. I adored hot chocolate, but she never liked it. "It reminded me of you," she replied, with a smile that suggested she missed our married life. I smiled at her, and we left her there. They want to do it together, she asked hesitantly. I was ready to decline, but I was curious if I could endure in her presence without my chest hurting. I grinned and replied, "Sure." We headed to a local cafe this time. She followed my automobile. We ordered 2 hot chocolates and made light chat. Surprisingly, it felt strangely good to talk to her without feeling upset or pain. She has breached every promise we made to each other. My trust is beyond restoration. But I was not going to let that define me for the rest of my life. I believe in my heart that I had forgiven her, but forgiving her did not imply I was going to put my trust in her again. The ship has sailed. She went to bed with another man. My worry of another betrayal remains. With me, it will take time to let go of it. I was simply taking it one day at a time. My counselor offered me this suggestion, and it actually worked. I simply hope that with time, I will be able to let go of that dread fully. Here is the next story. Our son Harold started school 8 months ago, leaving Sabrina and me to become empty nesters. At the young age of 45, we were overjoyed when he received an Oxford University scholarship. As empty nesters, we are currently rekindling our romance and embarking on a new chapter in our lives. Without children, I believe that our married life would quickly improve and that we would resume our previous frequent and enjoyable activities. However, SA experienced a sense of melancholy throughout the first 2 months as her adored boy ventured out into the world on his own. Furthermore, as she reached her 46th birthday, she saw some new facial lines and a few extra pounds. While I thought these qualities contributed to her charm, she seemed to regard them as indicators that life was passing her by and that the days of thrill and adventure were over. After conducting study, I realized that similar sentiments were common. In return, I tried to give her consistent support, numerous compliments, and enough time to adjust to our changing family dynamic. It took a Few months, but on Friday night, she returned from work, radiating happiness and serenity reminiscent of her marriage. I knew 20 years ago, bursting with grins, she appeared to be a reinvigorated woman, and we spent the weekend wrapped in one another's arms, making up for lost time from years spent tending to tasks that were no longer necessary. The next morning, I awoke to find Sabrina curled against me, her face beaming with pleasure. Good morning, she greeted me with a smile. Last night was amazing, one of her sparkles, and I want more of it. I simply said, I love you, darling, as I held her securely. For the first time in years, I felt like our marriage was back on track, ready to take on the next stage of our journey. Together, 3 months later, our lives were flourishing, financially secure, and with rewarding occupations. Harold is flourishing in school, and our marriage has blossomed magnificently during the last 3 months, bringing us closer than ever before. Every moment we spent alone together was cherished. Friday nights had become our favorite date nights, complete with movies, restaurants, and an anxious rush home to enjoy one another's company. It was our concerted effort to live a colorful life outside of the limits of our home, a nostalgic homage to our younger selves as we sought to recreate our youth. On this particular Friday evening, she proposed we go for a drink after dinner, with a playful touch on my leg and a cheeky grin. She hinted at the possibility of a delightful evening ahead. She had heard about a new club called a Hideaway for her friends at work, which was only a 10-minute drive away. The club turned out to be a beautiful place filled with soulful live jazz music. We had a few drinks at the bar, and Sabrina's warm and flirting approach added to the charm of the evening. Her exuberant energy was contagious, and I looked forward to the moments we would have later in the night as I sipped my third martini. During the band's brief interlude, a stranger approached us and called Sabrina's name with familiarity. My surprise was evident as I observed my wife's attitude change from joint to apprehension, hurriedly introducing us. Before any further conversation, "Hello, Matilda. How nice to see you." Sabrina gave him a warm grin and welcomed his embrace. "This is my hubby, Stephen," as she used herself. A wave of jealousy ran through me, a nagging suspicion that something was wrong. Despite my inebriation, I couldn't ignore the growing coincidences, Sabrina's newfound happiness, the discovery of a new bar, her unexpectedly affectionate demeanor, and now a chance meeting with a man at the very bar she urged we visit. Despite the lack of specific evidence, suspicion continued to build, putting me on high alert. Nathan appeared to be in his early 40s, personable, and with a deep voice reminiscent of Barry White. He engaged us in delightful conversation. And as we had another drink, my initial apprehension faded. Consider the possibility that his appearance was simply fortuitous. However, the atmosphere changed once we sat together for 20 minutes and enjoyed the jazz band's music. Nathan aggressively requested if he might have the pleasure of David Ching with my wife before I could answer. Sabrina up and led him to the David's floor, leaving me rooted in my seat. Angry anger erupted within me as I recognized the setup, but against my better judgment, I elected to stay and watch them. David's my discomfort increased. Every beautiful move, every whispered remark exacerbated my rising discomfort. Sabrina's proximity to Nathan, the way she rested her head on his shoulder and put her arms around his neck, it all got on my nerves. Alarm bells rung loudly in my head, confirming my concerns of danger ahead. When they returned, Nathan began chatting as if slow David Ching with my wife was normal. Nathan praised my wife for her assistance at work and questioned about my interests. Sabrina spoke quickly, almost as if prepared. Stephen adore football. He's a fanatical Manchester United fan, she cried excitedly. Not a single match escapes his attention on television. Is that true, Stephen? Nathan pointed out that tomorrow's playoff game must be on your agenda. Winston and I never miss a game and will be at the pub. Celebrating their Trump triumph over Liverpool, I confirm with Stephen today is your fortunate day I happen to have. 2 tickets to the game, which were generously donated to me by one of my suppliers, despite the fact that I am not really fond of football. I was going to give these away, Nathan declared, exposing the prized tier. 1 centre field seats. I instantly understood the underlying meaning of his motion. He resembled the serpent luring Eve with the forbidden fruit. I pretended to be unconcerned, suppressing my irritability. Impressive. Tickets, really, why don't you experience the game for yourself? Not my cup of tea. Old chap, I demand you have them, especially since you are Sabrina's husband. It's be an honor, Nathan's remarks fueled a burning fury within me. I accepted the tickets, however, fuming with rage. If he dared to call me old chap or old guy once again, I was afraid I might lose my ability to remain composed. I replied, thank you, Nathan, for your generosity. I am confident Sabrina and I will make the most of the game. However, I braced myself for what I knew was coming when my wife said, darling, I really don't enjoy going to those games. You should go. With Winston, you would have a better time together. Do not worry about me. I have plenty to keep me busy, so it's settled now. Will you go with Winston tomorrow? She declared strongly. At this point, I couldn't tell the degree of their relationship, well, whether she had already crossed the line with him or was thinking about starting. Our marriage, it was clear that she desired him despite her misperception of my drive and astuteness. I elected to remain on the sidelines and observe the event unfold, armed with only intuition. Observations from the David's floor and an arranged setup at the bar, I decided to let events unfold while preparing my next steps. Sharing with my wife was out of the question, regardless of the temptation of playoff tickets or other financial incentives. If she desired companionship elsewhere, she was free to do so, but I refused to play such a game. And her decision will have consequences. My impression of Nathan was obvious. He projected refinement, charm, and a compelling allure, all of which are attractive to women in their 40s. However, his pursuit of a married woman made him unsuitable. Nathan was the archetype of a predator savoring the game of wooing married women and reducing their spouses to mere onlookers, which fed his own ego and sense of control. I recognized him as a malevolent manipulator, despite the joyful atmosphere created by the cocktails and her time with Nathan. Sabrina failed to notice my quietness when we left the pub. Winston and I went to the playoff game as scheduled, and I wasn't naive. Before leaving, I deliberately placed voice-activated recorders throughout her home, activating them using the Find Me app on her phone while she was showering. Assuming they would have plenty of time to get during my absence, I expected either a rendezvous or a talk about the events of the previous night at the pub. To my astonishment, she remained at home throughout the game, and the recordings revealed no noteworthy information. Despite my caution, my suspicions persisted, leaving me on edge about what they possessed. When I returned from the game, Sabrina was immaculately dressed, and a delicious dinner awaited me. After exchanging affectionate welcomes, she led me to the kitchen. How was the game, darling? Did our squad emerge victorious? She inquired. Yes, Manchester 131, I responded, sweetheart. You must be overjoyed to have watched the game from such great seats. Nathan's gesture was quite lovely. She said yes. That was very generous of him, and the seats were wonderful, I affirmed. Sabrina appeared content. Her smile shone brightly throughout the evening. To my dismay, Nathan-related talks became a frequent occurrence, whether at work or at dinner. She complimented his success, his lakeside property, his travels across the world, and his supposedly pleasant personality. My patience looked skinny then. One evening she returned home full of enthusiasm and showering me with more affection than normal. That was quite a warm welcome. "What is the occasion?" I inquired. "You won't believe it. But do you recall how I've always mentioned La Travata?" Sabrina started excitedly. "Yes, I recall. Why do you ask?" I replied. She informed that a performance is scheduled for this Friday at the Royal Opera House. "Sabrina, you know I can't bear opera. Are you certain you want to go?" I questioned. "Yes, I actually do, but you do not have to accompany me. That's good news, you know. I had lunch with Nathan today, and he indicated that he had acquired superb opera tickets from another supplier, similar to those he offered you for the football playoff. When you learned about my long-held wish to see La Travata, he gladly provided them to me. He was dismayed when I explained your dislike for the opera and your refusal to attend. However, he came up with the brilliant idea of taking me to the opera and then to a nice supper afterwards. Wasn't that thoughtful of him?" "My dear Sabrina," gushed. "Very considerate. What a gentleman," I responded sarcastically. Before adding, "Naturally, you declined his offer." "Well, no, why should I do that? I understand you don't want to go, but it's not a big problem. Surely you don't mind if I accompany Nathan?" Sabrina argued. "It is a huge thing. The issue here is that you should not be going on a date with another man, whether or not I am present. That is hardly the behavior of a wife. Frankly, I'm amazed you'd consider taking a date," I stated unequivocally, fully aware of the staged nature of the scenario. I did not perceive it that way. "I apologize. You misunderstood. You recognize Mason. He is our pal. He graciously offered you those magnificent playoff tickets, and we had a wonderful time. He always covers our drinks and has been a supportive colleague at work. I'm sure you understand," Ina stated. Internally, while grinning, I decided to give her enough leeway to explain her intentions and see where it led. "Yes, she has done all that, and he appears to be a decent guy. However, I am uneasy with the concept of my wife interacting with another man. I would rather that you did not go or do anything foolish. You're an adult who can make your own decisions, but you know where I stand." I made my irritation and uneasiness clear. She must have noticed my anxiousness. "Okay, darling, I understand. I did not mean to upset you. And now I'll move on from the matter. I apologize if I offended your feelings," she said, hoping to diffuse the tension. "My feelings remain intact," I answered. "I concerned about the integrity of our marriage." She approached and kissed my forehead. "Do not worry your dumb little skull. I love you, and it would never be a date. Stop being envious, and let's move on." She promised me that we would let the subject rest, but I couldn't shake the discomfort when she noticed our intimacy that night. I pretended to have a headache. I'm still reeling from our chat, angry and upset, and my uncertainty has been ignored. While I wasn't sure if she'd been intimate with Nathan, it was clear that she had started something with him, whether she knew it or not. I was aware that if I did not intervene, trouble would ensue. If they had passed that threshold, our marriage was in risk. The situation with Nathan worsened. I can tell in her that his continual presence in her chats made me envious, so I asked her to stop from meeting him for lunch. She resisted, asserting her right to continue their friendship. Stephen Wine denied the opera tickets as requested. "But you are overreacting. I will not cease being his friend, and if that includes occasional lunches, you'll need to be more accommodating," she argued, and despite my wrath, I recognized I needed to walk gently in order to address issue without causing further strain. Our men marriage, their conversations soon progressed from lunches to drinks after work. When I challenged her about a possible affair, she fiercely denied any wrongdoing, claiming she only loved his company. "So you are not drawn to Nathan? Don't lie to me, Sabrina," I confronted. "Every girl in the office is attracted to him, dear, But I am committed to you and have not broken any lines, she responded. But are you tempted? I pressed. Which girl would not be? He's definitely attractive, and his voice is mesmerizing, however. There's no need to be concerned. She reassured me. I don't have anything to worry about. How would you react if I went out to lunch and drinks with a woman I liked? I doubt you'd be so understanding. I replied. The debate had a negative impact on our relationship with our home. I grew cold for a few days. Sabrina was enraged at the mere notion of me being with another woman, insisting that it was not an option. She even warned me that if I cheated, she would cut off my balls, a threat that seemed ludicrous and symptomatic of her distress. I couldn't shake the idea that our marriage was hanging in the balance. Then something happened one evening. She arrived home 3 hours late, without a phone call, leaving me filled with dread and fear. She walked in as if nothing had happened, leaning in for a kiss, as if everything was fine with the world. To her surprise, I pulled her away, violently fixing her with a steely stare as I made a venomous charge that distilled my rage in dread. Ain't it nice of you to finally come home? Have you spent the night with your friend? It was a tone she'd never heard from me before, and she quickly apologized, citing a dead phone and losing count of time. But when I pressed further, asking if she had been with Nathan, her silence spoke volumes. I was furious, making it abundantly obvious that our marriage was on thin ice if such behavior continued. If I find out you cheated on me with him, we're done. I refuse to tolerate infidelity or lying. I cautioned about the gravity of the situation, which weighed heavily on us. Her assurance that she would be faithful upset me, and she apologized, promising to end her interactions with Nathan for the first time. Sabrina seemed to realize the gravity of my requests. She stopped talking about him and his apparent greatness, but continued meeting him for lunch and drinks. Unbeknownst to me, the only difference was that she no longer recounted their experiences together. 2 weeks later, over dinner, I brought up the matter, asking if she had actually discontinued her lunches and drinks with Nathan. She leaned down to stroke my arm, providing a reassuring smile in a sympathetic tone. She admitted that she was still seeing him, but opted not to tell me to save my feelings. To my surprise, she seemed unaware of the extent of my rage and hurt. After hearing her admission, however, it was her next sentence that had my fury boiling, revealing a request that no sensible husband would accept. Darling, you are aware of my feelings for you, and Nathan is only a friend. The truth is, he requested me to accompany him to his work dinner function because his original date had cancelled at the last minute. He needs someone at his side, and because we're such great friends, I agreed to accompany him and promised him you'd be fine with it. Shaking my head in disbelief, I responded, no, I'm not okay with it. Absolutely not. You can't accompany him, Sabrina. You are still my wife, at least for now. Stephen, please stop being so jealous and irrational. He's a friend, and he needs my help. I am going. You'll simply have to trust me. I promise everything will be fine, she answered. Old fool, damn. Has this man's influence rubbed off on her to the point where she refers to me as the old fool? Sabrina, if you go, I assure you that I will not be okay, and our relationship will suffer. I cannot physically stop you. However, the answer is no, you cannot leave, I asserted firmly. Naturally, we slept in different beds that night, and for the next week my interactions with her were limited, as I dealt with my anger and sorrow over Nathan's position. To her credit, she appeared to understand my sentiments and stopped bothering me about Nathan and the proposed date. The day after her confession, Nathan gave me an unexpected call at work. Sabrina had apparently given him my phone number in the hopes that he would persuade me to reconsider my position. I made a mental note to confront this VI violation of trust when I got home later that evening. Stephen, how Are you old chap? Nathan greeted me casually. Nathan, what a surprise, what? Prompted you to call? I responded, curious about his motives. I am calling to apologize. I'm sure Sabrina informed you. About my desire for her to accompany me to my corporate function? I now understand it was a mistake to involve her in that way, and I apologize if it created any stress at home, he explained. Yes, it was unexpected, and I explained my feelings to her. I confirmed she made a remark. Indeed, instead of putting Sabrina in that situation, I should have contacted you first and sought your agreement. It should have been a dialogue between the men. Nathan acknowledged. I sat in startled silence. This man's arrogance was stunning. As I listened to his silky, convincing speech, my rage pursued the elderly chap. Allow me to make things up to you. Please specify your preference, and I will make arrangements for it. Perhaps season. Tickets to Mansion would be suitable for you, he offered smoothly. Nathan, are you really recommending I exchange my wife for football tickets? Are you aiming to turn my wife into a commodity trading partner for merchandise? Do you hold her in such low regard? I cede my rage apparent. Let me make one thing very clear. I don't share my wife with anyone, and if you dare to call me old man or old chap again, I promise I'll pull your tongue out the next time we meet. I'm completely capable of purchasing my own tickets. Let's put an end to this conversation. I insist that you stop here, make advances towards Sabrina, and find someone else to keep you company. He continued chatting as if he hadn't heard anything I had said. Stephen, my friend, I am sorry you feel that way. I honestly admire Sabrina and wanted to request your permission for her to attend me to my event. Please don't direct your rage towards Sabrina. Despite her indicated interest, I am responsible for making the decision. Would you reconsider letting her be my date for that evening? Listen carefully, Nathan. No, stop asking. She will not accompany you. That concludes things. Furthermore, I want you to stop having lunches and beverages with her after work. It is harming our marriage, and I am sure you understand the gravity of the situation, Stephen. I'm sorry you feel that way, but Sabrina and I are only friends. I do not intend to end our friendship because of your insecurities. I'm sorry you won't allow me this one request. And after everything I've done for you, including providing football tickets and sea tickets, you appear ungrateful. He retorted. Enough. I've already conveyed my gratitude for the tickets, and as previously stated, I can purchase my own. Please leave us alone and refrain from meddling in my marriage. I snapped and slammed down the office phone. In disgust that evening, I arrived home to a downcast Sabrina. Clearly she had heard about the exchange and was unsure how to respond. She could not tolerate the stillness any longer and spoke up. I overheard your talk with Nathan today. Did you have to be so rude? You've hurt his feelings. The glare. I shot her when she acknowledged Nathan's feelings could have turned our pond into solid ice in the middle of the summer. Screw you, screw his feelings. I snapped. Isn't it funny that you're concerned about his sentiments, but not your husband's? Why on earth did you give him my business phone number? Do you really need to be with him that desperately? Maybe I should leave, and then you can spend time with your new beau. She averted her sight, mumbling, I was hoping you two could be better friends so we can all go out together. I'm sorry. It turned out this way. I never intended for anyone to be hurt. Are you out of your mind, woman? I want nothing to do with him, and I made it clear that he should cease taking you out for lunch and drinks. In case you forgot, you are a married woman. It's time to start acting like one. Alternatively, this will end in disaster. Mark my words, I retorted harshly. Her frustration boiled out, and she fired back, Stop acting like a jealous teen. We have been married for 20 years, and nothing is going to happen. I hope you're correct, I replied calmly. My statements were laced with bitterness. I'd hate to think I've spent the previous 20 years with the wrong woman. The weight of my statement appeared to strike her, and I hoped it would bring her to her senses. We didn't speak again that night. In fact, I began sleeping in her son's room, overwhelmed with rage over her acts and statements needing to be alone. Sabrina was upset about my decision to sleep alone and tried to make amends in the coming weeks. She claimed she had stopped meeting Nathan for lunch and was attempting to be a more affectionate spouse. I eventually returned to our bed, but I wasn't prepared to be sexual with a woman who clearly had feelings for another man. She was not pleased with my hesitancy and made several unsuccessful attempts to establish intimacy. I had a nagging sense Sabrina was still seeing Nathan, and my instincts told me I needed to be cautious if I wanted to save my marriage. Unfortunately, my suspicions were verified when I discovered the date of Nathan's event while casually browsing. My wife's text messages, we had never used passcodes on our phones previously, and I had never felt the need to spy, but the discovery made me unhappy since I knew our relationship was about to alter. However, this newfound understanding helped me plan my following steps. It came as no surprise that Sabrina's recent professions of devotion and attempts to be the ideal wife were really a ploy to redirect my focus away from Nathan's dilemma. I discovered that she intended to surprise me by informing me that she would be attending the event with Nathan the following Thursday night. This discovery prompted an idea I wanted to test her devotion and see if she would choose to be faithful despite my prohibiting her from seeing him so over. Breakfast the next morning, I casually mentioned that I had a meeting in London on the 22nd and wouldn't be returning until late the following evening, knowing full well that Nathan's event was on the same date. I gave her the option of deceiving me by attending the event or coming clean and confessing her plans. Either way, I'd made up my mind. I wouldn't hang around. If she acknowledged her intentions and headed to the party, I would leave and apply for a divorce. If and she came without informing me, it would mean the end of our marriage. Unfortunately, Sabrina stayed mute and chose not to reveal her objectives. She continued to deceive me by projecting the image of a perfect wife. Each evening I arrived home to delicious meals, a clean house, and warm kisses. However, there was no mention of Nathan or the upcoming event. As I kissed her goodbye on Thursday morning, I knew it would probably be the final time, so I departed from my workplace with a heavy heart. However, my objective was never to visit London. I intended to stay the night in the same hotel where the event was being held. During this time, I obtained legal counsel and scheduled the preparation of divorce documents as well as a probable date for serving the papers. I even offered to pay the process server double to accompany me to the hotel event and deliver the papers if I approved. If Sabrina did what I expected, our marriage would be ended. Nathan dressed modestly for his dinner engagement, wearing a medical mask, tinted glasses, and a cap. At 8 p.m., I sat in the lobby reading the newspaper with a clear view of the front doors. Nathan walked into the hotel with my wife on his arm. She was dressed in a small black dress, dark stockings, and high heels. Her physique highlighted her lack of a Barrett. They laughed and greeted others in a cheerful manner. Their demeanor indicated a loving couple. Though I had expected their coming, I was not prepared to witness their intimacy personally. Despite my rage, I maintained my cool and quietly videotaped the scenario on my mobile phone, a piece of proof I would later share with my kid while explaining the imminent divorce. As I watched Sabrina, Nathan dialed her phone and watched as she glanced at the screen before letting the call go to voicemail and focusing her attention on Nathan. It seemed as if someone had ripped my heart out as I observed her contempt for my call, putting her time with him over our relationship. Though tears threatened to fall from my eyes, I kept them back, leaving many voicemails in a hopeless attempt to preserve what remained of our relationship. Hello, baby, it's 8 p.m. I hope everything is well. Since your phone went to voicemail, I miss you so much, and I love you. I implored in each message, hoping that she would listen, feel a feeling of shame, and leave the party before things get out of control there. Was still a potential that she may leave or phone me to announce the end of our marriage that night. She didn't bother. Listening to the messages, I waited around the meal area, keeping a discreet distance while observing them. It became clear that their bond was deeper than Sabrina had led me to believe. They acted like a couple during supper. I kept an eye on their activities, and by 10 p.m., after several David Shees and some intimate moments, it was clear they were about to depart the dinner party, armed with the room number from the text messages and supported by the substantial tip I had given the bellman. I knew exactly where they were going, room 1246. Susan, the process server, arrived on time at 10 p.m., and we discussed my plans. I willingly gave her an extra £200 for her efforts. Soon Susan and I boarded the elevator at 11 p.m. and headed to room 1246. Susan knocked on the door, and we heard activity inside. As I positioned myself to the side of the people, a deep voice inquired from within, "Who is it?" Susan displayed her ID to the crowd and claimed, "Security, please open the door," although he probably did not examine the ID. It was effective, and we heard the lock disengage. The door cracked open, showing Nathan's face. I quickly stepped in front of Susan and kicked the door open, causing Nathan to stumble backward, collapsing naked and bewildered on the floor. As he rolled in front of Sabrina, he heard a feminine gasp from somewhere in the room. Her gasp turned into a piercing scream when she realized I was standing in front of her. With Nathan lay sprawled on the floor, I pressed my foot firmly against his neck, all £200 bearing down on him, and told him not to move. I signaled to Susan to approach Sabrina and deliver the divorce papers. With a grave look, Susan delivered the documents to Sabrina, capturing a snapshot of her astonished reaction. Holding the envelope in a symbolic gesture of finality, I removed my wedding ring and formed it in her direction. Sabrina's expression exhibited a mixture of amazement and guilt as she observed my agony. Finally realizing the significance of her actions, suddenly she pleaded with me, professing regret and a wish to recover our relationship. However, it was too little too late. "Stephen, I'm sorry I made a terrible mistake, and I can't bear to lose you. Despite everything, I love you, and I don't want a divorce. Please let me come home with you. I'll explain everything and make things right again. Please don't do this." I shook, my head incredulously gazing at the woman before me with a sense of disillusionment. In that moment, I realized how aged and diminished she appeared. Witnessing her betrayal had extinguished any remaining affection I held for her. The love that had sustained me for years was now replaced with contempt and revulsion. With that realization, our marriage reached its final, irrevocable conclusion. Standing over Nathan, my foot still pressing down on his neck, I motioned for Susan to leave us alone with the unfaithful couple. As the door clicked shut, I turned to face my wife, my voice heavy with despair and anger. "Congratulations, you shattered my heart and brought an end to our 20 years together, and you did it in the most despicable way possible. You lied to me, betrayed me, and then chose to deceive me with that scumbag. Because of your actions, our time together has come to an end. Just sign the divorce papers and don't even think about coming home until Saturday afternoon. I'll need a day to gather my belongings. You can stay in our flat until it sells, which I imagine won't take too long. In the meantime, why don't you move in with this?" I said, took my shoe off his throat and slammed it on his manhood as I left the room and my wife for the last time. There was a sound like a man in terrible pain. Applejack Nathan lost the ability to continue his lineage. As he was pinned to the floor, he attempted to pursue legal action. I made it clear to Sabrina that, as she testified in his favor, I would reveal her affair to her family and present them with the incriminating. Photos understand the gravity of the situation. She wisely chose not to cooperate, informing the police that she didn't recognize the individual responsible for his injuries, Nathan feeling enraged and betrayed by the woman he had taken from me was left seething with frustration after 2 months of persistent attempts to reconcile. Sabrina reluctantly signed the divorce papers, finally acknowledging that our marriage was beyond salvaging, realizing the irreversible damage done. She mustered the courage to share the truth with our son, taking responsibility for the demise of her once happy years together with the sale of our flat. We divided our assets and embarked on separate paths. Nathan, incapacitated and nursing his wounds, distanced himself from Sabrina. Now, a single woman, he rebuffed her, advances urging her to move on and find someone else at 46, divorced and carrying a few extra pounds. She found herself not as desirable as she once believed, particularly after the harsh reality check of Nathan's deceit. Meanwhile, I dedicated myself to self-improvement, hitting the gym diligently and shedding excess weight. 6 months later, I emerged in great shape and crossed paths with Tina, a charming 37-year-old divorce with a delightful 9-year-old daughter named Ava. Tina appreciated my loyalty and affection, treating me like royalty while Ava and I formed a special bond, and I relished the opportunity to spoil her at Harold's graduation. Sabrina, now 50 and showing signs of age, appeared solitary and discontent with the direction her life had taken, learning from Harold about her feelings of envy and sadness upon witnessing my newfound happiness with my new family. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for her as I basked in the joy of my beautiful wife and daughter. Sabrina poured her heart out to her son, expressing deep for her actions and how poorly she treated me. She couldn't forgive herself for succumbing to the seduction of that despicable man. She confessed to Harold how losing my love made her realize the magnitude of what she had given up and how much she missed our old life together. She recognized that her selfish desires had caused immense and loss for everyone involved. On the contrary, my life took a positive turn shortly after the divorce was finalized. Tina, having experienced the devastation of being cheated on by her ex-husband, made a solemn vow to never inflict such pain on me or our marriage. We remained devoted and faithful to each other for the next 3 years, cherishing the 3 grandchildren that Ava and Harold blessed us with. Nathan disappeared from our lives following his injuries, while Sabrina chose not to remarry, spending the next 2 decades as a lonely woman, plagued by remorse for betraying me and destroying our once happy life together. Harold found happiness in marriage with a wonderful woman, expanding our family and giving us another grandchild. He forged a close bond with my new family, and Sabrina became a distant presence, only appearing at Harold's events and eventually at her funeral. Thank you for taking time to hear today's story. End of article. If you like our stories, please remember to subscribe to our channel so that I can push better stories to you in the future.